So we're looking at a new indicator today that comes with every Flux Professional and every Flux Investor package purchase, where we normally have the time cycles here, and we're following those time cycles using the histograms below. We can do for price what we do for time. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to open up a new chart, and I want to introduce you to an indicator called the Fractal Pivot Confluence Tool. It's a horrible name. If we tried to name it something very complicated, we sure hit the goal. And so it gives us a very unique advantage in determining where a market is most likely to bounce or not. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this to an open high-low close candle, and I'm going to set the candles to be black no matter what. So there we go. And we'll turn off all the drawing objects, so we just have a pure price action chart. So this next indicator is predictive, and it does for price what we're doing with the histograms for time. So I'm going to scroll down to my NinjaTrader indicators list and search for the FLUX Fractal Pivot Confluence Tool. And as you're following this video later, please follow these steps. And I'm going to double click and add the Fractal Pivot Confluence Tool to the NinjaTrader indicator list. When I do that, I have parameters available to me. Here's where things get really interesting. Computer, I would like you to look at a 1-minute chart. I can change any of these values, but I'm looking at a 1-minute chart today, so I'm looking for 1-minute pivots. I'd like you to go back 5,000 historical bars. 5,000 historical bars. And search for every place that crude futures on a 1-minute chart has put in a pivot. So Bruce, what that means is the computer is going to identify every place crude touched a price and bounced away from it like a hot plate. Does that make sense? It's going to search for every price where crude touched and bounced away from above or from below. And now I tell it how many ticks I want that swing to be. What is the strength of that pivot in the past? I don't want to see little ones, little 3-tick pivots. Pain in the butt. Give me some big ones. And now look, start my study at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Since we started early this morning, I'll start my study at 5 o'clock. And it'll recalculate 5 o'clock every morning. But bring me back the top 30% of pivots, the ones that have bounced over and over and over again more often than the other pivots that have bounced. So we're developing a behavioral history of pivots. We're developing a graded scale of reflection. And I can adjust this number, and we will in a moment, to include more or fewer pivots in our statistical boiling down. And then I tell the computer, hey, make the most frequently hit lines, the most frequently hit pivots wider than all of the other pivots. So Bruce, in the top 30%, the ones that are thicker than the other lines have more history. They've got scars. They have calluses. So let's go ahead and hit OK. So the first question we ask ourselves is it working? The study started at 6 o'clock. And so, Bruce, everywhere we see a thick red line is a place that crude has bounced in the past. Okay, it's a lot easier to see when we stretch it out, right? And so there are two things going on here right now. Number one, we have the thicker dark lines. And these are the places where pivots have happened a lot in the past. And Bruce, can you see what happens when we go there? There are significant refractions, right? Reflections. There's another thing that's happening here. When there are a series of lines together, Bruce, there's what's known as confluence. And so I can very easily take a simple drawing tool, and before the market opens, I can identify where those zones are taking place, where lines are closer to each other than normal. Bruce, does that help our cause? It sure as Shinola does, doesn't it? He said Shinola. Oh. So here's another example of teaching a computer, giving it intelligence specifically designed for one task. Your job, computer, is to find me the prices where CL almost always bounces at. Now let that sink in. These red lines are a breadcrumb trail. They are a 1,000 candle power flashlight on things the banks don't want you to see. They don't want you to know that they frequent certain prices. They have orders positioned all up and down the axis, right, Lisa? They have buy limit orders and sell limit orders and positions built up all along this axis. And so what the software is saying is, hey, they're committed here, they're committed here, they're committed here, and they're committed here. They're making important decisions when they get to these places. They have to because they have positions there. So, Bruce, one of the things we can do is we can alter the percentile. The significance, Sean, determines how big of a swing of a pivot the market is looking for, the computer is looking for. So the higher the significance, the larger the pivot. So if we set that to 2, it's going to be looking for 2 tick swings. The one you need to spend the most time with is the percentile. Because watch when I change it from 30% to 80%. Bruce, there's too many lines, right? Right, class? There's too many lines to work with. If I come in here and I change it from 8% to the top 10%, things change a little bit, right, Lisa? I have the top 10% of pivots that CL has put in place. These are the prices over the last 3 days where the market almost always touches and bounces away. So there are a few things that we can do, right? Number one, I can add 30 days of historical data. Then I can come in here and I can tell it, hey, let's go back 15,000 bars. It doesn't change it, right? So Bruce, the area that we're in, these are the lines in the sand. These are the places when CL touches, it tends to fly away from. And so what I'll do is I'll increase this slowly until it accounts for 3/4 of the bounces that I'm seeing. And so right now, Sean, if I change this from 10% to 15%, do you see how now it's covering almost every little bounce along the way? I won't go any higher than that. I won't go any higher than that. And if anything, increasing the percentile from 10% to 15% has further identified this and this as a critical resistance level. It's further identified this as a critical confluence point and this as a critical confluence point. So that is the FPC line. This is the Fractal Pivot Confluence Tool. Now we haven't added any flux signals to this, right? There are no time cycles. The default setting when you get with your software is 20% starting at 7 o'clock with 5,000 bars. And that will get you in the ballpark for almost every indicator, almost every market, forgive me, that you're analyzing. Here are the same settings that we just applied on crude to gold. And so when we have a scenario like this, Lisa, I'm getting some of the pivots, but I'm not accounting for everything, right? I have this big gap down here. And so what I'll do is I'll go back to the default value, 20%. And when I added 20%, Bruce, do you see how I picked up this high and this double top right here, Mel? I found this pivot, I found this pivot, I found this pivot, and I found this pivot. And it touched here twice, right? Everybody with me so far? The first lesson you're going to learn with the Fractal Pivot Confluence Tool is the areas where there are hardly any lines are the areas, Mel, where the runners will go. Inside of this space, there are no resistance lines in between these two. And what that's telling us, Bruce, is that if we take positions inside of this area, let's say, for example, there's a green dot right here in our flux time cycle marker. It's telling me, Bruce, if I go long here, there's nothing stopping me resistance-wise until 1243.7. And vice versa. Carrie, if I take a short up here or I see the double top, there's nothing stopping me until I start getting close to this support line right here. In fact, the dangerous area where the market starts to ping pong and ricochet is up in here. Linda, this is where all of these bounces start to pop in. So when you have a number of lines in a short compressed area, we tend to get consolidation and chop. But when we have a signal over here, what time was that? 9 o'clock? Can you guys see my crude, my gold chart here with my time cycle markers and the histograms? Mel, over here at 9 o'clock, I'm going to put the global crosshair on. Can you see on the right-hand side, Carrie, I have a double selling pressure signal. I have a higher high pattern 5 901 signal. And then I have a 904 signal with trend. These are both bearish signals. They're both telling me the banks have sold here. This is a time they have their finger on the sell button. And Mel, I have from 904 to 918 to make it happen. But on my support and resistance chart, there's nothing to worry about between 1243.7 and 1240.8. So what that does is it gives me a square. I have from now here until then here. This is wide open free space. There are no pivots. There are no orders sitting here waiting to kill me. And so if I sell it at the right place using that time signal, let's put the vertical line right there. I have until the 923 cycle to figure it out. And Mel, that gets me within 2 ticks of that black line down there. So the fractal pivot confluence line adds the missing dimension to your data mining studies. It is telling you that's as far as you can go before somebody's going to step in and say, excuse me, we need to bounce here. I know you'd like for us to go lower, but we can't. At least not yet. And when you add time to that, over on the right-hand side, look, we had a lower low red dot. We know that's a pattern 5. Or 4, forgive me, pattern 4. So Mel, as I get closer and closer to the support line down here, what's my risk? Look at it. This is a signal where we just had 2 time cycles in a row. So if I'm going to go long, Lisa, look, I can put my stop just underneath here. And now I can trade where? Straight back towards the next resistance level. That's the first place I'm going to hit my head. So I know what my risk is. And I know what the potential reward is. So in that sense, the Fractal Pivot Confluence Tool says, hey, if your time signals are telling you short right here, that's fine. Don't put your stop any higher than this red line, because it should hit here and bounce away. And if you're going for a target, try to get this. And then, if you're going to go long right here, that's fine. Put your stop right under this line and go for this. So right now, Lisa, I have until 9:35 for this trade to work. If we went long. Do you see how that becomes a very important dimension? I'm at that blue line. I'm about 5 or 6 ticks away from the resistance line. So now I'm thinking, whoa, this time stop is going to get in my way. Maybe I should start locking in profit. Maybe I should start moving my stop up tighter and tighter because I'm running out of time. But if I was 1 or 2 ticks away from this line by now, why would I risk banging my head right there? Giovanni says, does it work only on the 1 minute time frame? No, of course not. It works on whatever you tell it to watch. So if we were to apply this, for example, to the pound dollar, and we put it on a 15-minute pound dollar chart, I can then turn it to a 15-minute chart. So Giovanni, here's a 15-minute pound dollar chart with the lines. Do you see them there, brother? Same concept. Sean, I can change it to a regular candlestick, sure. Whoops. So whether it's the pound dollar on a 15-minute chart, the E-mini S&P on a 5-minute chart, do you see where the levels are coming in, guys? These are the landmines. These are the landmines that you have to watch for. The only reason these lines are here, is because this is where the ES is consistently bouncing. This is where the ES is consistently bouncing. If you need to see more levels, increase your percentile. Go from 50 to 80%. It didn't really add much to the equation, did it? No. So go back to 50%. Super clean. Looking at this chart, what do we see? We see it came down. It didn't touch the line. It missed it by 1 tick. And then JV, it came down. It touched the line and went through it by 1 tick. Mel, it came back a 3rd time and it touched it to the tick. Lisa, if you had to guess, just looking at this chart without any other information, what would you assume the ES is coiling to do right now? Anyone, if you had to guess what the ES was most likely to do, what do you think it might do? That's exactly right. Lisa got it. I'll let you see if that's the case. Carrie got it. James got it. What I've seen here is a progression. Hot potato. The first time, it doesn't touch it. It misses it by 1 tick. That tells me that there's a lot of support right here the first time. They come back the second time and they punch the stop. This is a stop run right here. Hot potato again. They touch it and they pierce it. The third time, they nick it by 1 tick. So it has history now here, 3 different occasions. 1, 2, 3. But the third time was higher than the second time. It rose up. And so we have an ABC pattern of sorts right now. A, B, C. Right? So if this candle, think about it, ready? If this candle closes above this line, it's very likely going to go back up to 23.47. If the candle closes below this line, it's very likely Mel to go back to 23.31 quarter. And the only reason we know this is because the computer has done the heavy lifting for us. The PC, its only purpose in life is to find those signals. So Lisa, can we now use these signals over here to help us figure out which direction it might go? At 8:25, where were we, Aslan? At 8:25, we were here. Lisa, at 8:25, where were we on the FPC lines? At one of the thickest, brightest red support lines on the screen. How far did we have for the trade to work? Until the next resistance line right here, right? B. Well, where is B? B is up here. So we had until 8:40 or 23:40 half. Okay, now what do we know about the signals? We know that it came and it touched this line right here. That's a very weak signal for the sellers. It shouldn't touch this line. We spent 45 minutes this morning talking about when it touches the line like that, it means that the sellers aren't really interested. Now it's right at the open, so it's hard to gauge. I'll be the first to say it's a coin toss. The next signal coming though is what? Oops, excuse me. The next signal coming is coming at 10 a.m. The next signal coming is coming at 10 a.m. So I can put the vertical line over here. And so when I get here to this point, Lisa, I'm expecting a buying pressure signal. Unless it's a higher high green dot, in which case it might be a pattern 5. But right here I'm going to see, am I up top or am I down below? And that will generally dictate where we go from here, right? So the Fractal Pivot Confluence Tool is your second most powerful indicator in the professional or investor packages of the FLUX. It is specifically designed to get you the most important pivot information in your market. Put it on an hour chart, put it on a 15-minute chart, put it on a 1-minute chart. It doesn't matter. It consistently brings that information to light. I will say, if you do use a chart like this one, don't have your candles the same color as the lines, because you'll have a hard time seeing when they're close together. You'll have a hard time seeing when they're close together like that. Yep, so that's included with every purchase as well. If you have any questions about this indicator or any of the techniques or parameters involved, please email me, Michael at backtothefuturetrading.com.